Hello, we are so glad you're here with us. If you enjoy this episode, please rate, review, and share it so that we can reach more ECEs and childcare workers. My name is Rachel Neville, and I will be your host today. We have the most special episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the AECEO's 75th anniversary. So, I will be taking you through the past 75 years of our impact and our work. Let's begin all the way back in 1950. On October 30th, 1950, the Nursery Education Association of Ontario, NEAO, which would later be renamed the AECEO, was established. The creation of our organization was in response to the absence of government regulation and formal facilities for training early childhood studies for day nursery staff, which was the term back in the day. Part of the work of the association took the form of AECEO branches, each with their own board of elected volunteers. So these branches supported advocacy initiatives, hosted local events and meetings, and contributed to the overall goals of the organization. Over the years since then, new branches were added and branches were closed, and at the height, there were 24 across Ontario. In the following years, the organization initiated the first university extension course and the first diploma course at the Toronto Metropolitan University for preschool teachers. We also established a voluntary certification process for preschool teachers. This process recognized and encouraged achievement both in training and preschool teaching. Certificates were awarded to applicants who achieved the required level of training and whose work in the preschool field was evaluated over a required period of time by certified colleagues. Applicants with out-of-province and out-of-country credentials were required to undergo a pre-certification process to obtain a letter of equivalency prior to applying for certification. This pre-certification equivalency was a large part of our work for many years. Fast forward to the 1980s, and the AECEO launched the Week of the Child. This was an annual public education campaign to raise awareness of the value of early childhood education and early childhood educators. Several years later, the AECEO established a legislative recognition committee to advocate for the creation of a professional regulatory body for ECEs in Ontario. The hope was that the establishment of a regulatory body would raise ECE status as a recognized profession, thereby improving working conditions and raising wages. In 1992, the AECEO launched ECE Link, a publication for ECE students, frontline practitioners, administrators, supervisors, trainers, and policymakers, covering a wide variety of topics that impact the sector. In 1994, we revised our Code of Ethics. These were a set of values and principles by which ECEs were asked to adhere to in their practice. A grant was received from the Ministry of Community and Social Services to print and distribute copies of the Code of Ethics to all licensed programs across Ontario. This document continued to be used as the ethical standard in ECE training institutions and childcare programs for many years. The following year, French services for the AECEO's equivalency process were transferred to l'Association francophone à l'éducation des services à l'enfance de l'Ontario to deliver to the province of Ontario. Prior to this, the AECEO worked with both French and English ECEs in Ontario. In 1996, our name was officially changed to the Association of Early Childhood Educators, Ontario. This change reflected our new role as the professional association and voluntary regulatory body for early childhood educators in Ontario. The 2000s ushered in a new era for the AECEO as we published a position statement on universality, supporting the principles that expansion of early learning and childcare services in Ontario should be confined to the nonprofit sector. This was the first time we advocated for expansion in the nonprofit sector and affirmed our position that childcare is a social and public good. The Common Table for Childhood Development and Care was formed by the AECEO, the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare, the Ontario Association of Family Resource Programs, Home Childcare Association of Ontario, Ontario Early Years Centre Network, and Middle Years Matter Coalition. This group was established to promote collaboration in advocacy and delivery of services to children and families in Ontario. The 6 founding partners established and formed the steering committee and promoted a collaborative membership model. This common table started to shift the work of the AECEO to prioritize community and collaboration, centering advocacy and the voices of those working in the field. In 2007, legislation established the College of Early Childhood Educators. This, in turn, changed the identity and purpose of the AECEO. Our work moved away from regulation and professionalization, which was now the role of the college, and our new identity would emerge in the years to come. In 2009, the college was granted permission to use the AECEO Code of Ethics in the development of their own document. In the 2010s, the AECEO's equivalency and credential assessment process came to an end after almost half a century, and this responsibility was transferred to the college. The AECEO Letters of Equivalency certificates issued on or before February 23, 2014 continue to be recognized by the college. The AECEO continued advocating for the best interest of our community by demanding that the province of Ontario keep its promise to provide seamless, full-day, full-year programs for 4- and 5-year-olds, outlined by Dr. Charles Pascal, the Premier Advisor on Early Learning. We supported and advocated for ECEs to be equal partners in the program, with our position stating that the program should recognize the specialized body of knowledge, training, and accountability of the early childhood educator as a lead teacher or equal partner in a multidisciplinary team environment. In September of 2010, the full-day kindergarten program was introduced, and our community celebrated this key component of the blueprint for early learning in Ontario. In 2013, the Professional Pay for Professional Work campaign to improve compensation for RECEs launched at the AECEO Provincial Conference in Toronto. The AECEO took the lead in addressing principles for continuous professional learning by publishing a discussion paper for member and sector-wide feedback. The AECEO and OCBCC launched a 3-year initiative to promote the value of licensed childcare and the importance of registered early childhood educators to the delivery of a high-quality program funded through the Ontario Trillium Foundation. The following year, an award was presented to the AECEO by George Brown College, School of Early Childhood, and the University of Toronto, Ontario Institute for Studies in Education for our contribution to the profession. After many years of lobbying by the AECEO and other ECE sector stakeholders, the Ontario government provided a $2 per hour wage increase over 2 years for childcare centre staff and licensed home childcare providers in 2015. The AECEO launched a petition calling on the provincial government to fund professional pay for all ECEs in Ontario, regardless of where they work. With the approval of our project, Mobilizing the Early Childhood Workforce in the Movement for Decent Work by the Atkinson Foundation, one is able to see the birth of the work taken up by the AECEO presently to 2025, a pivotal shift towards who the organization is today. Following significant pushback from the ECE community in 2016, the Ontario government backed off on proposed changes to the Childcare and Early Years Act, CCEYA, ratios, group sizes, and age groupings through concerted ECE community efforts led by the AECEO and multiple ECE sector partners. The AECEO then began mobilizing forums, a more concerted effort to go into communities to consult, collaborate, and create advocacy campaigns that reflect the voice of the workforce. These efforts continue today in person and have also been conducted on Zoom to bring together more people across the province. The Decent Work Project continued in 2017 with over 4,000 RECEs and early years staff responding to the consultation survey that helped inform recommendations made by the AECEO's Decent Work Task Force to the Ministry of Education. The policy recommendations, called Transforming Work in Ontario's Early Years and Childcare Sector, called for a provincial wage scale with a starting or minimum wage of $25 per hour. This marked the beginning of the AECEO's focus on making wage recommendations to the government as part of a push to improve compensation for early years professionals in Ontario. Throughout this decade, through a series of workshops held in collaboration with the Institute for Change Leaders and the OCBCC, we developed 5 local communities of practice, or COPs, to work with the AECEO as decent work teams to organize and build capacity in their local communities. The AECEO made an active commitment to participate in and support the process of reconciliation with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people and communities across Canada and here in Ontario. A guiding committee on truth and reconciliation was established in 2018 to share knowledge, traditions, and teachings, and to help inform AECEO's efforts. In 2018, the professional pay petition reached and surpassed the goal of 10,000 signatures. This incredible participation affirmed the importance of raising the pay of early years professionals in order to support the sector. Responding to this significant advocacy, the Ontario government released Growing Together, Ontario's Early Years and Childcare Workforce Strategy that included a plan to implement a wage grid that reflects qualifications and experience for all program staff. This was sadly not realized after a new government was elected. We continued our work in collaboration with the ECE Link editorial committee, and in 2017 developed a revamped and improved ECE Link that included peer-reviewed articles. This publication continues today and brings together the work of academics, frontline workers, and early years professionals from across the sector. To close out the decade, the AECEO and OCBCC launched a successful joint campaign calling on the new Ontario government to continue the wage enhancement grant enacted by the previous government in 2015. This garnered 17,000 signatures on a hard copy petition that was presented in legislature 16 times. In March 2020, we hosted a conference focusing on full-day kindergarten called Framing Our Future Kindergarten Summit. Subsequent roundtables were part of an effort to follow up and address issues discussed at the summit. Later in 2020, the AECEO responded to the COVID-19 pandemic, providing frequently updated resources for ECEs receiving the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, and other financial support. We engaged the community with a pandemic pay letter and campaign advocating that the Ontario government extend the $4 per hour pandemic pay increase to apply to all staff in emergency childcare. We then launched the survey called Returning to Work, ECE and Early Years Staff Perspectives, garnering 4,000 participants and prompting the writing of our joint report with the OCBCC called From Reopening to Recovery, released in August. The federal speech from the throne mentioned early childhood educators and a universal childcare system, and our Rising Up for Childcare campaign launched, focusing on frontline ECs and staff, parents and families experiencing the childcare crisis. In November, the document An Insult to Educators, Children and Families, Childcare Community Views on Ontario Government's Proposed Changes to the Childcare and Early Years Act was released by the AECEO and OCBCC. Ultimately, the proposed changes to the CCEYA that impacted the work of early years professionals on the floor were not moved forward. The following year, we continued to support ECEs throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and launched a survey called COVID Experiences. The findings of this survey were released in a report called Forgotten on the Front Lines. Soon after, ECEs won vaccine priority in Ontario. We hosted a kindergarten roundtable and kindergarten conversations, bringing together and providing space for ECEs working in Ontario's kindergarten program, resulting in the development and publication of specific resources for this group of ECEs. Also in 2021, the federal government invested $30 billion into the creation of a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system, or CWELC. The AECEO joined a federal budget watch party to celebrate this historic milestone. The AECEO and OCBCC published the Roadmap to Universal Childcare in Ontario, first edition, detailing policy recommendations for the successful implementation of CWELC in Ontario. We organized Take Action Tuesdays, a summer campaign inviting educators to engage with the roadmap through activities that are typically found in childcare programs during the summer. After pressure from the AECEO community, the Ontario government signed the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement, indicating their commitment to work with the federal government to begin system building. The provincial government implemented a wage floor of $18 per hour for ECEs in Ontario. As a culmination to the ongoing kindergarten conversations, the AECEO hosted Voices from the Classroom, a roundtable with kindergarten ECEs who shared their stories and experiences. Throughout the pandemic, through the approval of the new project, Building Leadership and Learning Communities, we hosted 11 professional learning experiences and conversations, welcoming more than 4,200 participants. In 2022, the AECEO participated in the National Day of Action led by Childcare Now. This initiative included training sessions for community engagement, a resource toolkit of flyers, infographics, media scripts, an MPP breakfast, a press conference in the media gallery, and a large rally on the lawn of Queen's Park. Local COPs and childcare programs held their own local events as well. In 2023, we convened a conference committee of ECEs from across the province and various roles in the sector to plan the 2023 AECEO virtual conference. This was the AECEO's first virtual conference and first provincial conference since 2016. The 2023 AECEO virtual provincial conference was called We Raise Each Other Up, ECEs Building Leadership and Learning Communities of Joy, Curiosity, and Hope. We welcomed more than 900 participants and 44 ECE presenters across 25 sessions. The conference included virtual networking and discussion lounges, an online gallery of digital posters, other creative formats, workshops, presentations, and small group conversations. The AECEO COPs were then rebranded as care collectives and launched to better reflect the ethos of the groups and support continued expansion of membership. After months of advocacy, the Ontario government announced the ECE wage floor would be increased to $23.86 per hour as of January 1st, 2024. The AECEO published program profiles and policy briefs connected to the Roadmap to Universal Childcare in Ontario, first edition. In March, after decades of work by the AECEO community, Ontario saw a historic policy win. Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada, was adopted unanimously by the House of Commons. This enactment set out the Government of Canada's vision for a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. It also set out the Government of Canada's commitment to maintaining long-term funding relating to early learning and childcare to be provided to the provinces and Indigenous peoples. Looking back on the past 75 years of our work really is quite moving because there have been so many major milestones and changes to the policy landscape, but also the lives of Ontarians and what people are going through on a day-to-day basis. Now let's talk about what our current work is looking like. As the Professional Association for ECEs in Ontario, we believe that early learning and childcare matters for more than any return on investment or for the construction of a future neoliberal, efficient, and technocratic workforce. ECE services matter because humans are interdependent and relational, and we must work and care collectively in order to thrive. Caring for children is an ethical and social responsibility that we all share. It's not just an individual parental concern from which the government can absolve itself, or a task that is natural for women and therefore undeserving of decent work and fair pay. We cannot have policy and funding mechanisms that continue to advance this perspective. In order to achieve our goals of decent work and pay for early years professionals, we have some key areas of focus in our current work. We have our decent work common table, the roadmap, second and first edition, childcare policy briefs and program profiles, the listening and storytelling community research, government relations and campaigns, decent work care collectives, cross-sector care worker and movement engagement, sectoral strategy, student and community activation, parent activation, member engagement, communications, grant writing, and more. We continue to work with our collaborators and project partners to ensure that we have a strong, united voice. Some of these include the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare, Atkinson Centre and George Brown College, Childcare Now, cross-sector allies like Decent Work and Health, Justice for Workers, Equal Pay Coalition, and more. This current moment still calls on us to think, act, and do differently in the ECE sector in order to advance goals of achieving decent work for ECEs and early years staff, who are the key to meaningful care and early learning experiences for children and a steadfast source of trust and dependency for families. We continue our efforts to build and strengthen relationships, solidarity, and allyship across the province and nationally. Further, we are committed to supporting the reconceptualizing of the discourses we employ to advance a system of public, affordable, and accessible ELCC. Services that embrace educators, care, and decent work. We will continue to bring the voices of educators to the forefront of these conversations. We remain committed to doing our work in a way that centers anti-racism, inclusivity, and Indigenous resurgence. This is not the time for disconnected action. It is not the time for individualism. It is not the time for disconnected policy interventions. It is the time for the voices of educators and the ECE community to be centered, valued, and heard, and responded to in policy debate, dialogue, and development. You cannot build a caring system, a caring service, or a caring economy without care with and for the caring workforce. So, what's next for the AECEO? Looking ahead to the future, we remain committed to responding to the needs of our community and consulting with them to ensure that our work amplifies their voices and concerns. We will continue to grow our community, mobilize the workforce, and work collaboratively with others to build public support and people power, working towards advancing a system of collective care and learning that centers decent work. We will continue to leverage the strengths of the early learning and childcare workforce and build leadership and capacity in the decent work movement, fueled and led by early childhood educators. We will continue to resist policies, narratives, and ideologies that center economic efficiencies, autonomy, individualism, and austerity. We remain committed to strengthening our collective thinking and advocacy, community and knowledge, mobilizing to advancing a vision of decent work in the ECE sector that embraces our human interdependence and therefore the societal value of care and care work. What's next for the AECEO? Well, here's to another 75 years of community, solidarity, and connection with all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider becoming a member. The link to join us will be in the episode description. Your membership makes a difference in the lives of ECEs and childcare workers, children and families, and allows us to continue doing this work. To all the members currently supporting us, thank you so much. To all the ECEs and childcare workers listening, it has been our honor and privilege to serve you and work alongside you for the past 75 years. And we can't wait for what's next. Thank you so much for being our community, and stay tuned for all the incredible things we're doing during this amazing 75th year of the AECEO. See you soon.